Okay. So we'll start with the territorial recognition. So we begin this gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Stream Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, and acknowledging this reminds us that a great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendships of Indigenous people. With that, we will start our meeting. Going on to our agenda approval. So can I get a mover and a seconder? Be it resolved, board approves the agenda for meeting 6. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Let's see Andrea's hand and Petite's hand. That'll work. All right, I'll do a super quick vote. So if there's anyone opposed, any abstentions.
How many people do we have?
I think 9
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that right?
8.
And Benoit, no, 9. Oh, and Brielle, 10. Okay. So go back to 9. Okay.
Cool. Moving on to our minutes approval. Be it resolved, board approves the minutes from meeting 5. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Call. Olivia. That music is pretty fun, eh? Nice little ambiance. Again, we'll do a super quick vote if there's anyone opposed. Any abstentions? And we're good. Okay. So on to our first agenda item is the approval of the BUSU audit. We have Jordan. Jordan? Yes, Jordan with us here today. We'll pass over the floor to you.
If I may, I would like to start if I could, Mr. Chair.
I guess we'll pass it over to Robert first.
So as the board, what I think is important for you to note is that the actual auditor, so Jordan is here from Grant Thornton, so a public accounting firm. Jordan works for you as the board. So he does not work for Tan, who's our manager of finance. He does not work for me. He actually works for you. And I'll let him sort of speak to what his role is a little bit. And so what he's presenting is last year's finances, because we finished the finances April 30th of each year. And then at which point in time we engage an auditor, and that's also a role of the board of determining, what audit service we use moving forward. And it gets presented at our annual general meeting each year. And so Jordan comes in as an organization separate from our organization to look at what we do. And then he gives you a report, and he gives a report publicly to say, this is where we are from a financial perspective, but then also to note any problems that might have occurred that he's noticed. They do something called testing. And what testing is they'll take, in some cases, 100% of the transactions, look at them. In other cases, 20% of the transactions and look at them. And then what they do is they put together the report that you have that you was circulated to you. So I just wanted to sort of draw the attention that the auditor is actually the person that works for you, not someone that works for the operational side of the house. So with that, if I may, Mr. Chair, I will turn it over to George.
All right, well, thank you for the introduction, Robert, there. So as he did mention, the purpose of the audit is we are to be independent of the staff there. We come in to perform our checks. These include both discussions with management, as well as substantial testing and everything. And this is not only just looking at reports that are generated and invoices, but also your controls in place and provide recommendations and everything in regards to that. So if you go to page 1 on your report, and actually give a bit of background. So as Robert mentioned, I'm Jordan. I'm a manager at Grant Thornton. I've been there for almost now 5 years and everything. And it's not just myself, but a few of my colleagues. We come out for about a month, I would say, Robert,
yep,
and to do our vouching and everything on site, as well as ask questions remotely and everything there. So the first page, okay, I apologize.
Nope, do I have the wrong document?
I sent the second one through, but the first.
Is it this one?
Is that the one? Yeah, that's the one there.
Here?
I like to just go over this report because this is essentially what's the most important thing in here, aside from the statements, is basically our opinion on them. The fact is, as I mentioned, we're independent. We come in to do our checks so that basically you can rely on the information that's provided in these reports. As Robert did mention, it does take us some time and everything. So the balance sheet is of your year end as of April 30th, 2023 there. But at least you'll be able to circulate these with your members and everything. And should they have any questions, of course, reach out as needed. So continuing on down, so of course, right there, the first paragraph, clean opinion. There isn't anything in the financial statements that we identified that we need to specifically draw your attention to, or that can't be relied upon. So as such, in auditing terms, we give an unmodified opinion in this case here. So generally a clean report there. The rest of this report indicates the responsibilities of management. So of course, management's responsible for the financial statements and all the information in there. Our responsibilities, as described below, is to come in and do our checks and provide the opinion. So we'll go on down to page 3. So as I said, this is a snapshot in time and everything. So this is as of April 30th of this year here. So see at the top there, your cash balance is about $8 million compared to last year at 5.7 million. And then this year, marketable securities, you have to remember this is at a specific time. So 9.8 million compared to 10 million. That's just the general fluctuations in the market there and everything. The remainder there are your accounts receivable, small balance, inventories, of course, we like to see small balance there. And prepaid expenses, these are just generally deposits. So current assets is about $18 million compared to $16 million last year. And continuing on down to the long term, the biggest item here is your property and equipment. So this includes your fences, some new laptops, some server upgrades that were purchased during the year that we don't expense all at once because of course we're going to use them over the next couple of years and everything. So we capitalize them, put them on your balance sheet, and over the next couple of years, we depreciate them through the income statement, which you'll see on the next page there.
If I may, Jordan?
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Chair. One of the other things that's important too is as we're looking to build a new building, the balance sheet is the most important document. So the one that we just looked at on page 3 is the most important document. That's what a bank looks at. And so what the bank looks at is they say we are an $18 million corporation, almost 19. And that's what they're going to be looking at when they assess our ability to borrow funds.
Yep. So then, of course, the second thing is the liabilities down there. So 2.9 million to 760,000. Again, it's a timing thing. It was just the bus payment that came in late that year. So it was paid off early May there and everything. The remainder of that is consistent with last year. So $2.9 million in liabilities. Going on down to your fund balances, we'll look at this more on page 4 there, but I just want to highlight 476,000 in property and equipment. Your internally restricted funds is 13.9 million, and the unrestricted is about 1.5 million, consistent with last year there. So we'll move on over to the income statement here. So a few changes this year. So of course, your commissions and fees are up about 1% this year. Majority, of course, are internally restricted or to the capital fund there. Moving on down, your product sales, you'll notice this, again, we're out of COVID now. So Union Station's all operating again for a full year in there. So 1.12 million, which if you look at your statements from 2019 pre-COVID, as was trying to look now, this is fairly consistent to a normal year and everything. And that's what we like to see coming out of COVID. Moving on down, investment income about 129,000. That 150,000 we'll see in the note later. Again, unrealized fluctuations in the market there. So total revenues of about $14.3 million. Moving on down to your expenses, wages and benefits. Of course, now we've got all that part-time costs back in and everything for the staff down below. So $2.3 million compared to $1.6 million. The cost of goods sold, again, fairly consistent with 2019 and earlier levels, $460,000 there. Continuing on down below, the student services, this is a number we kind of focus on because this is all of the activities, the dental, UPass, all of the expenses go through that account there and everything. So we like to see that majority of your commissions and fees are basically being returned to the students and everything there. We primarily want to ensure that the funds coming in, the purpose is to help the students and everything there. So in total, your expenses come out to $14 million and your excess of revenue is about $220,000. Again, relatively small amount because of course we're giving it all back to the students and everything. And going back even to pre-2019 levels and everything, this would be an area that we kind of like to see in everything, just so you have a small surplus to carry over to next year. So moving on down to the fund balances, you see the line beginning of the year and everything. Of course, the internally restricted had a bit more usage this year, so it went down ever so slightly, but that's not a concern in this case. So operating fund, 1.6 million, internally restricted about 7 million, and your capital funds there, 7.3 million. And that's for like your building and potentially other significant expansions. We'll move on to page 5 here. So this one, basically it explains how you spent your money this year. This is your change in your cash balance there. So you start with your $220,000 in excess of revenues there. The amortization, of course, anything that doesn't affect cash, we back out. That includes any unrealized changes in the market there. And then, of course, any timing differences on the balance sheet. The big one there is your marketable securities. Of course, you have your investor TD there. They buy and sell the stocks and everything. So that's just the change in the value there. Your total purchases of property and equipment were about $330,000 in the year, fairly consistent again with pre-COVID levels. So in total, $2.2 million increase in cash for an ending balance of about $8 million there. Now, I know I went over this relatively fast, but did anyone have any questions on those 3 pages there?
I don't see that in chat.
Does anybody have any questions on Zoom?
No, I think we're good.
Perfect.
Okay, so generally the remainder of this is your notes. So for accounting policies, you're allowed choice under the accounting standards for not-for-profits there. So essentially note 2 here identifies any significant policy choices that we did. The main thing to note is all of the policies you applied last year are consistently applied to this year. So there was no change in the accounting standard this year. The financial statements are prepared the exact same way as last year. As such, you can rely upon the comparative column to be consistent with this year. The only note that I think is important for you guys is, of course, note 8 here, the page 11 there.
I wasn't keeping up.
There we go. Because we just disclose the ending balance of the internally restricted funds there. We don't need to disclose each individual income or expense, but we do need to disclose the breakdown there. So as you can see, in total, fairly consistent with last year. If you have increased, if you have decreased, overall 6.9 million compared to 7.3. And then your capital fund, of course, you're trying to build that up a little bit there. So 7 million compared to 6.5 last year and everything. So overall, I just want to say a very healthy balance sheet and everything. Of course, you guys do depend on Brock University for your commissions and fees. So we do note that as kind of a dependency that without them, you would not be able to operate or anything.
Thank you for presenting. That was great. Anyone has questions, now would be the time. Here or online. I see Brielle has her hand up. We'll start with you.
Thank you. I was just wondering, I was looking at 2022 and 2023, and in 2022 we gave money to the ombuds levy, but not in 2023. I was just curious as to why.
So I can actually answer that. Do you want to answer it?
No, I'll let you take it. You might have a bit more background.
How about you start because you are auditor, and then I'll fill in any other detail.
No, if sorry, the $26,000 here on the the ombuds levy. Okay, you gave money. If I recall correctly, that one was decreased in the current year because there was no fees received for that one.
Yeah, so Brielle, formerly the Ombuds office reported to BUSU. So it was actually a BUSU employee. There was a decision made to actually have the Ombuds person report to the president of the university. That's who the Ombuds reports to currently. And what we do is we flow the funds through sort of like we do for student health and sort of like we do for athletics and recreation. The funds go directly to Brock University. And when Brock University took responsibility for this, we wrote them a check for the entire amount that we had in surplus because it was a fee that can only be used for the Ombuds department. So the amount that's on the in the restricted funds there, that was actually a check written to Brock for the entire amount. And thus in 2023, that does not appear. It has a zero balance because we transferred all funds collected for that fee to Brock University. Helpful?
Thank you.
Good question though.
So I think if there are no more questions then we do have a motion that we can vote on here.
I want to point out just one other small thing in that too. So Brielle, just to sort of consistent with that, you'll also see a small surplus, for example, in the fee for provincial advocacy. And so what we will do when we finish the audit today, next week we will write USA, and again we have several people at USA right now. We will be writing USA a check for $5,711. and we will give them those funds, because all of the funds collected for that provincial advocacy fee are BUSU funds. And what they ask us to do is project. We project conservatively so that we're not giving them too much money, but we're also not trying to hold back too much. So we actually projected a little better this year than we did last year. We owed them $8,000 last year. We only owe them about closer to $6,000 this year, but we will issue that check to them next week.
Okay. Now we can move on to the motion. Okay, so be it resolved that board approves the BUSU audit as presented. Could I get a mover and a seconder? I have Nadia and Lena. So I'm going to do this one very slowly. So I'm going to start with all of those in favor. So if you're in favor, please vote. Are you gonna vote? No.
It's 11 now. So got 10 in favor.
Any abstentions? And any opposed? That passes. Let's say, did we get?
Benoit, I didn't get your vote. How would you like to vote?
Oh. Let's just move on anyways then.
I'm just gonna switch it to 9 then.
Yeah, for sure.
It
It passes regardless.
Yeah.
So. All right. Cool. Done with that one. Thank you again, Jordan, for presenting that.
So a couple things. I want to thank a couple people. So Carly, who joined us on the call, is from Kitchener-Waterloo. She actually serves as in a finance role for us. So Carly, thanks for being here tonight and for all of your work as a board member last year, and then certainly on finance this year. Tan, who joined us relatively recently. He serves as our manager of finance. Thanks for all of your work on this this audit. It's your first time through BUSU's audit, so it was a good learning opportunity for you from a BUSU perspective. Certainly, you've done many audits before, and thanks for being here this evening. And Jordan, thanks for your continued support and work to ensure that BUSU is accountable to our stakeholders and to our board. I want to say thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for always having me at the board meetings. By all means, feel free to reach out to me anytime and ask any good questions. So thank you.
Yep.
Well, we do move on. Do you mind if I did a few?
Nope, I can absolutely do this. We can pause for just a quick moment. We've seen these already, so but we cannot get them signed, or you cannot. We have to wait until you approve them.
I'm just gonna mute and we'll just pause for a second while Jordan heads out.
And we're back. Continuing on. We'll just pass it right over to you, Robert, whenever you're ready for the budget update.
Okay, so it is, we are almost next week, we will reach our 6-month period of time in the year. And so part of what we always need to do is look at budget. So we presented a budget to last year's board for approval. That has been available on our website, and we actually just put that in front of the current board when we were in our board training. And so now what we have to do is we have to constantly look at this budget and update it so that we can provide some accountability to our board. So if I look at the document that was circulated, there are a couple fluctuations, and those fluctuations are going to be in color. If we look at, first of all, on the revenue side, we have student fees. And so we projected about 2.2 million, and we're actually going to come in at 2.170 million in student ancillary fees. And the answer to that is why? Why is it lower this year? Is because the number of students at Brock has actually declined a little bit. So we would have based it on a flat enrollment, and we're actually slightly smaller than we've been. Yeah, go ahead.
How slightly?
250 students, right? So that's what that is projections based on, and that was based on the Board of Trustees report, which is also public. So anyone can see that on the Secretariat website, and that's where the projection came from. So our revenues from student ancillary fees go down slightly. Our interest income is up slightly. So we projected $10,000 in interest, and this is the interest we just earn in the bank. So it's not our investments, it's the interest in the bank. And the reality is that the banks are actually paying a fairly healthy rate of interest. And as a result, we'll make a little bit more money. So we projected 10,000 and we're now projecting 13.5. Okay. All right. Now we'll move into the expenses. So the new executive professional development. And so this was something that was approved at a previous board meeting.
Just give me 1 second. Sorry, you keep talking. I'm just gonna log out of my.
Okay, that's fine. And so we actually didn't have a line item for this new expense, although it was approved by the board. And it was actually slightly more than that came to the board. So about 16,500 came to actually about 16,000 came to the board. It was actually $2,500 more than that. So there's an $18,500 expenditure that we had $0 value for. There was money allocated for executive professional development. The board approved some more. And so we have to factor that into the budget. And it is factored in. In terms of the transition retreat, so if we look at what we did for the board at the beginning of the year and things of that nature, it wasn't as much money as we projected. That's a good thing. And so it's at $5,500. In terms of our winter retreat general, so what we typically do is have a year-end event, and the year-end event is really around our board. And when we projected it last year, we didn't even know what we were going to do, but we had our board retreat last year. We actually all went out for dinner and things of that nature. And so we didn't need $10,000. We actually need about $3,500 to do something nice. So that's been reduced. If we look at executive meeting expenses, they were allocated initially $500. They've gone for some lunches and things of that nature, mostly internal, which are all good. They're meeting VPs and things of that nature. Good investment, no problem there. The executives also committed when they presented to you as the board, $1,000 each from their platform projects. And so that is also reflected in the updated budget. I'll continue down into office expenses. So our insurance premium, what happened this year is we actually had a lawsuit that we settled. And as a result, our premiums go up. So what had happened is we had an event in Isaacs and two people got in a disagreement. And one person pushed one person, the other person pushed them back. And as a result, we had to pay $85,000 out of our insurance plan. And the person that actually got in the pushing match, they paid $10,000. So those with the deepest pockets often have to pay, and we had to pay. So we had a legal insurance. We had projected legal insurance of a little over $100,000. The lawsuit got settled, and they take it back out of our pockets. So that's what they do. So that is what the reflection is in the budget there. In terms of a consulting fee, BUSU staff had planned on doing an equity, diversity, inclusion audit this year, but because some of the other expenses have gone up, we are not able to do that this year. So that is not financially feasible this year, but likely for next year. We'll be bringing that back to this board when we create our budget. In terms of IT support, we use an external firm to do our IT support, but it's just not people. So the $63,000 budgeted and the $68,000 now budgeted also includes all of our software fees. So for everything for Adobe, everything from Microsoft, our email addresses, our file servers, everything of that nature, plus some people resources. And really at the end of the day, they came in and they said, this is what our bill is going to be. And we accepted that. If we look at furniture, fixtures, and purchases, we had budgeted $5,000. We purchased a couple extra desks, and our budget is now $6,500 for that. Our cleaning supplies went down a little bit. So we had budgeted $6,000, we only need $5,000. And then if I'm going through the rest of the budget, there's only a couple more. In terms of our elections and referendum expense, we had budgeted $4,500, but we had a tremendous number of candidates in the last election for both Senate and board, which is awesome. And we expect a lot again. And so Kaylee has adjusted the number upward to accommodate that. And then our contingency fund, which started at $20,000, has been reduced down to $3,500. A contingency fund is just a fund of money in case we need it. And so it was already factored in that we might need some, and we needed some. So that's been adjusted. And then there's two other line items that have been adjusted. So there's a strategic plan priorities. And so those were things the executives were working on. It's been adjusted downward to $7,500. They've done some other things as well. And that is the changes from what we presented to our previous board. Alex was a member and certainly James was the chair of that board to now. If we look at the bottom line, we're projecting a surplus of $287, which is still fine. We're still in the positive, and we will continue to modify. So one of the things that I would not allow to have happen is if we're in a situation where the organization will lose money, and in one day figure that's going to happen, I will come to you right away. So I will not allow us to lose money unless you approve that. But we are still in a healthy situation for this year. But I wanted to update you on some of the line items that did change, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for presenting, Robert. Very thorough. If there are any questions, now's the time. All over the floor. Lydia, go ahead.
It's so anytime you're running a project or a budget of any time, you would typically build in a contingency, and the contingency is literally what didn't we think of, because budgeting is not necessarily a precise instrument. It's an instrument to keep us moving along in the right direction. And so a $20,000 contingency helps us deal with that. And it's unforeseen expenses or expenses that we projected as X that go up. That's what that is for.
Any other questions? Anyone online? Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. Go ahead, Nicole.
The new executive professional development says increase of 2,500 above board's decision. So what changed?
So go ahead.
So when we presented to you, when we presented the plan for new professional development for the executives, it was mentioned that the prices for things such as airfare and accommodations were on the low end because they were what we were looking at that time. When we went in after you approved it, it wasn't as cheap as it was because we looked at those prices the day before the board meeting, and we booked them the day or maybe 2 days after, and obviously the prices fluctuate, and that's essentially where that came from. And that was mentioned to you folks at the time. It was also mentioned that we hadn't factored in things such as luggage costs because we were taking basically like Flair. What's the other one where they make you pay for the bags? Spirit. And we had mentioned to you at the time that this is the number, but you need to know that it will probably increase because of a couple things. So that's where that comes from.
Do you have a follow-up?
No.
All right, last call for questions, and then we are moving on. All right, I think we're good. James, over to you. I'm loving that background noise. It really helps you focus, you know? I don't know if the online people can hear, but there's an event happening in Isaacs right now. So we just get a little bit of club music in the background. So
like half my brain is muting.
and then like kind of like down there too, yeah. Oh, Carly started?
No. Oh. So at the last meeting, obviously, or the last regularly scheduled meeting, we were obviously informed that I had taken on the BPSS role, and then at one of the special meetings, we had mentioned that we will bring to you a plan as to how to fill the role. We've deliberated for quite some time, tried to figure out what to do. We've obviously consulted with Chloe and Celine, who work closely with the BPSS, to see what they thought would be the best way forward, and their desire is to keep it how it is currently. So the plan is to leave the position vacant. I will take on the duties. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get Carly to be attending the CBC meetings. CBC deals with clubs funding. Carly is the CFO of BUSU. It just makes sense for her to be there over Alyssa. CBC doesn't really have any relation to Alyssa's role at all. It's better if I don't sit on CBC, because I do sit on the board, and should a decision that the CBC makes be appealed, I obviously sit on the board. So it's good to separate that. Carly's also sat on CBC before, so she has the experience there. It just makes some sense. Obviously, Alyssa can fill in if Carly's unavailable, and so can I. If Alyssa is unavailable, the likelihood of there being an appeal on the rare occasion, I think, is pretty low. And also there's precedent to leaving roles vacant for an extended period. Last year, there was 2 roles that were left empty for quite some time. The remaining 2 executives took on the majority of the duties, and then some student staff, part-time staff, did help out as well. And that's mentioned in the topic sheet that if needed, those are some resources that are there for the clubs team and for the events team.
All right. Any questions from anyone here? No one in the room? Anyone online? Yeah.
You're not hiring for the PD for now, right? So it's not for hiring.
Yes.
Correct. Sorry, I was waiting for you.
The next hiring will be in
March.
March, yeah. It is in March, but for the next year. So. Cool. All right. Yes, Gabby, go ahead.
Sorry, just quick question. Do you know how this will be addressed to students, or like put out to the students, so that they're aware of kind of the situation?
So typically we haven't made announcements for resignations. We made one last year with the president because it was the president. So we thought it was important to make that announcement. Sorry.
You're checking the 8.
Yeah. In the past, we had Alexa resign. There was no announcement of that. When we had Peter recall, that's obviously public because it's a recall. But when we've had recent resignations from vice presidents, they haven't been announced. I mean, if you go to our website, you can see that Aisha is no longer anywhere on the website. Her photo was taken down from outside the front office. There's an automatic reply on the BPSS email that says I've taken on the role, and to direct all emails to the president email if they would like a quicker response, but I am still also monitoring that email as well.
Do a follow-up, Gabby, or is that good?
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Last call for questions, and we are moving on. Okay. Gotta say, we're kind of flying through all this stuff right now. Like, we're halfway through the agenda, and it's only been half an hour. So let's keep on motoring. We'll go into our in-camera session. So be it resolved, board moves in camera at 6:35 p.m. We get the Uber and the seconder, and call it peak.
Before we, sorry.
Car.
The phone to go in camera.
Oh yeah.
Okay, wait, sorry. We did.
No, it's really big, by the way. Oh, I'm so tired. That's fine.
I don't really know what's happening in there. We were trying to figure out the speakers and stuff. Obviously, I'm gonna leave, go back upstairs and take a nap until we're allowed to leave for dinner. But I just wanted to, I guess before I leave, because I wasn't sure, I didn't actually realize we were going to the next topic that time. I just wanted to thank Robert and James, but especially Robert, in all of the work that he did in continuing to monitor the budget and adjust accordingly, and working with me to explain how a budget works. And yeah, so thank you very much, Robert. I will now say goodbye to all of you, but have a great rest of your board meeting. Confirming that no one needs me to come back after the in-camera session.
We're good, Carly. Thank you.
Thanks, Carly.
Bye.
All right, really quick, we do need to vote to move into camera. So we already have our mover and seconder. I will take any opposed. Any abstentions? And we're moving in camera. After a heavy topic, yeah. All right, good. All right, I'm hoping everybody is back. I can't see your screen, so I'm assuming that you are, but we're gonna just power through the last few things here. I'm gonna pass it right over to Robert, the general manager report.
Thank you. So the first item I have to talk about is new student space. You've heard this in every single report, and we have been given now a date of the June board cycle of Brock University. So Brock meets 4 times a year, and we have been given the meeting date of the in June to present to the board for space on campus. So that is the first time we've been able to see that mark for in the last year. So we're now meeting with the university every 2 weeks. I have much more optimism now than I would have when I first presented this to you in May. I'm not going to say it is 100%. Like, this is absolutely going to happen now, but we're in a much better position that this will happen now. What is also important is that we will have a referendum in February. It's the exact same referendum that occurred in terms of last year. We didn't meet quorum. So 80.1% of the students voted in favor, but we didn't meet quorum. So that is something that we probably will need to have a conversation with in the month of January, so that we can all help get our friends out to vote. That would be really, really helpful. So do you have a question?
I did. So we met the quorum for the referendum for the BUSU.
Yeah, man, that was so
6
hours.
How does that work? Like, wasn't it 15.4% for both, or was it just? Is it different?
Yeah, so we only have a quorum requirement for a referendum. Okay. If, for example, and the quorum is 14% of full-time equivalent students, so there's a bit of a calculation that's done there. If, for example, we got 11% voter turnout, the referendum would become invalid. The votes would still be valid for the directors, so, and for Senate. So it's only for the referendum that we have the quorum. I don't know if that answered your question, or ask it again.
Because you said we didn't meet quorum for
last
year.
Sorry,
oh, sorry,
I misunderstood that.
You were elected.
Okay, yeah.
There wasn't actually quorum.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter for your election or the senators, but it mattered for the referendum at the time. But it failed. Well, it was passing. If we reached quorum, it would have passed.
Yeah.
But we didn't. Because it doesn't matter if you have 95% of the people saying yes. If you have 13%, doesn't matter. You need to get the 14.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to skip through a few items right now in terms of, I will touch base on both our transit paces. So FlixBus, we are very close now. They've actually, both sides have agreed to an agreement so that they could actually stop on campus. We're waiting for FlixBus to sign the agreement. I'm optimistic that will start in January. So that's actually another transit service right on campus. So you don't have to take the Niagara Region Transit and go downtown and then go from there. Go Transit is going to take, so we started with Flix Transit in January of 2023, and we probably will now make it go actually in January of 2024. So certainly I've been asked some questions about Go Transit, very specifically about extending it to the last class. Certainly we are in touch with them monthly. So this takes some time, but we'll continue to stay on top of that. General Brock, our convenience store. Unfortunately, our manager, our supervisor, Grace Edmonds, she had some medical conditions and she unfortunately sort of said she needed to resign. Our new manager, Sydney, will start on Monday. So in the interim, Dave O'Connor and Jess Carey were basically taking roles in that space. But on Monday, our new manager will start. Scroll through to item 10 in terms of BUSU clubs. I report that there are 110 ratified clubs. There's actually 115 ratified clubs as of today, with 3 pending ratifications. So they continue to go up, which is good. With respect to club funding, you know, if because right now we've actually given out quite a bit of money. If we actually need somewhat more, that is something that we can deal with as a board, because there is still some surplus in funds. So if we give out too much money, what we don't want to have happen to our clubs is that they come and there's just no money left. So that is something we may need to address as a board moving forward. With respect to services, the services are actually really quite, in terms of, they're all up and running right now. For our legal clinics up and running. We will be having a tax clinic that will be coming forward in the next year. Our extended library hours start on November 26th. Our drive home program also starts on the 26th. That takes people, if they're staying at the library, there's no transit, there's no buses, so they can get in a Zoom, which is no different than Uber, and it takes them home. So that will start on the 26th as well. Food First, so our food bank program we're at $20,000 already. So we will be able to do it, but we may clip on $100,000 this year. And so that is not probably a sustainable proposition moving forward. Ron Bowman's done a good job on the sponsorship front, but we used to, just 5 years ago, we were about $15,000 a year. We're at $100,000 a year in that program. Go ahead, Alex.
Super quick question. Yeah. As far as participation in this program goes, are we seeing a lot of students taking advantage of? Yes, I'm seeing head nods. Cool, great, that's all.
Yeah, and so certainly people are collecting gift cards, and they're going to our breakfast, and they're going to our grab and goes, and we're building food into a lot of the things that we're doing right now. But that is a concern. It's great, but it also shows that there's a need, and that's kind of the sad part of it. We're going to try to fill the need, but that's that is a sort of the state of affairs of what we're dealing with. With respect to our holiday celebration, so I want to let you know as board members that on Thursday, December the 7th, we have our BUSU holiday celebration. You're all welcome to attend. There'll be food and some prizes and things of that nature, so that will be fun. And then the last thing that I have, and because I circulated the report in advance, is just personal. So as of the time I'm sitting in front of you right now, I'm 50% of the way through my 2 fall MEd courses. Yay! And when I get to December 15th of this year, I will be 50% of the way through my master's in education degree. So I'm actually quite proud of that. I still continue to live in Lowenberger residence on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. This week it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I will finally see my wife tonight. So I'm looking forward to that. And then this was actually a kind of since last board meeting, I celebrated my birthday. I'm 53. And I celebrated my wedding anniversary, and it was our 26th wedding anniversary. And that is kind of my report there. Everything else is in there. If there's anyone that has any questions about what I did verbally or anything that I posted.
Just out of curiosity, how is Lowenberger?
Lowenberger, so my room that I stay in is 8 feet by 10 feet. So it's quite small. Certainly in residence systems, they're all single beds and with not a very thick mattress. But I'm in a hallway for people that just stay 1 to 6 nights. There's not that many people. There's one hallway in Lowenberger that has this, and you can actually go. It's called an extended stay, I think is what it is on the residence website. And the rate is actually pretty decent. And so I'm staying for $64 a night is what I'm staying for. And so it's much more affordable than the hotel. It's right on campus, which is good. But they're residence accommodations. There's nothing lavish about them, but I could live in dorm room the rest of my life. I don't need a lot of creature comforts.
He hasn't changed his office since he came here.
Yeah,
No.
Robert does not need much. How
There's nothing
are
in
the
there.
village
Simple man.
I haven't been here on a weekend.
Oh, what the?
I was
Thank you.
here. I was here last night though.
Village, they party every day.
Yeah, come on.
Oh, okay. All right. Really quick, I just want to touch on the holiday celebration. I better see all of you there because last year we weren't invited, and I was pretty upset about it. So you better all be there.
So last year it was done at the individual unit level. So there was one for almost every. So we're now out of COVID, so we're all doing it together
That's the
again.
thing. I had like so many friends who worked for like Brock TV and like different coordinators, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we have our parties, blah blah."
I think we were gonna do a dinner, it just didn't work out, so we did it at the end of the year.
Yeah, we were dealing with a lot of stuff.
Thursday, December 7th. Do you have a time for that, or has that?
It'll probably be dinner.
All right,
Okay.
Ezra, you've been waiting very patiently. You go ahead.
I don't have a question. I just have a statement. I just want to wish Robert a happy 53rd birthday from Waterloo. That's all.
I guess we missed the party then, but. All right. If there are no other questions or comments for Robert, we will move on to our last item.
Yeah.
Last item. We made it, James.
You know what? It just takes a second.
Well, I tried to pull it up myself and said I can't open the file. So.
You timing up?
How long ago? Apologies. My report is probably the longest one I've had. There's a second roll included, so sorry. So we had our first BUSU AC meeting a couple of days after the last meeting. There was around 40, right? About 40 students attended. We were able to elect 4 committees. Unfortunately, we didn't allocate enough time for the amount of people. There were a lot of candidates that wanted to make a speech for the election, so we skipped over the advisory committees for both of my roles just because of the increased workload that I'm taking on. I figured I didn't really have the capacity anyways to add anything else, so that's why we decided to skip those over. The other ones
We'll do them in December.
Yeah, we'll do them in December, and Alyssa and Carly had some really good ideas for their committee, so we wanted to get those going. And obviously we needed the club's policy committee and we needed the elections committee because obviously elections had just passed. Also shout out to the board members that were there. And then for the board of trustees, we had the first board meeting, so cycle 1 for this term. And then I also attended some orientation events and committee meetings as well. And then in terms of homecoming, I was invited to every single event, and as I mentioned in many meetings before, whenever people invite us, I always say yes. I think it's really good that we're showing our faces at everything. I've gotten lots of compliments on that, and I'm hoping to keep that up throughout the year. So I attended every event that was run by alumni for homecoming. And Robert touched on food first. Just a couple specific details. So we ran 2 fresh produce markets. That's in collaboration with the GSA. It was actually Larissa Lobo, who is their vice president external affairs. It was her idea. Carly obviously helped a lot with that, but shout out to Larissa at the GSA. It was kind of her idea, and the first one went really well. There was about 84 students that came out, and then we were able to get it up more produce for the one that happened a couple days ago, and there was around 140 students. We had 2 hot breakfasts since the last board meeting. It's been like 6 meetings since the last regular board meeting, which I was realizing when I was making this report, and it just made it really long. And then obviously we were continuing to do our weekly grab and go. And then in terms of decolonization, this was one of my goals for the year. So we attended the executive. We had at least one of the executives at every Truth and Reconciliation Day event. I wanted to go to more, but unfortunately I started to feel sick midway through the day, so I didn't come back to the office. But Alyssa did carry the executive team that day and attended a lot of the events. And then I have, from Carly being on PACRED, she actually recommended me to sit on the decolonization working group. So we've had a couple of meetings for that so far. I've talked about ways that BUSU kind of wants to decolonize, such as bringing back better ways for Indigenous students to get involved in our advocacy process. And then I'm sure you've seen in the Rankin Family Pavilion the last couple of weeks, there is an exhibit there. There was an event for it a couple of days ago that I was invited to. That was really cool. They had some traditional food. So I had some bison with some cornbread, which was really, really good. And then in terms of USA, as we all know, the General Assembly is happening as we speak. We got some people on the call that are there. The referendum passed yesterday with 52%. We started the day 5 points off of quorum, and
James hustled.
I didn't do any work all day. I got people to vote, and I was here till 11 o'clock at night answering emails after doing the work that I didn't do and doing my report that was extremely late. I'm very sorry that it was not up with more time to read it. And then also, I kind of really wanted to mention this. Unfortunately, in the USA family, there was a loss. So the former president of the Waterloo Students Association, Stephanie Yamau, passed away. She was the vice president finance of USA. I kind of wanted to mention this here so that it's on recording of board minutes and that we kind of mention it, and we acknowledge all the work that she has done for undergraduate students in Ontario. I only briefly met her a couple of years ago at an online USA General Assembly. I'm assuming most of you on the call have actually never met her, but you have benefited greatly from her work in terms of advocacy. So I just kind of wanted to mention that and honor the work that she did and her life. And then in terms of CASA, they had the September e-plenary that we attended, that Alyssa and I attended, and also there was an EDI consultation session, and then I am continuing to sit on the committees that I've been on and going to those meetings. The politician meetings that we're going to, they're starting to slow down as we've checked off most people off our list. We finally met with the mayor of St. Catharines, probably my favorite politician we've met with. I really like him, very honest guy. I really enjoyed our time chatting with him. And Alyssa and I also met with Yasir Naqvi, who is the member of parliament for Ottawa Centre. So from my hometown, he is running for the Liberal leadership. So he wants to be the next premier of Ontario. The Pakistani Student Association actually had an event with him, and Alyssa and I kind of jumped in. We had a little bit of time in our schedule, and we talked about student unions because he actually proposed a bill when he used to be an MPP that was related specifically to the autonomy of student unions. So we kind of talked about that, and that was really interesting. Technically not a politician if you know poli-sci, but we met with a deputy minister, the deputy minister of colleges and universities. And obviously with all these politicians, the main things we're talking about is housing and transit. And then there was the VPMI grand opening, which is it's a long name here, Validation, Prototyping, Manufacturing Institute at Brock, and 3 of the 4 Niagara MPs were in attendance, and I briefly mingled with them and chatted. You can read some more information at the link.
That's down by
in the Skillet Hall.
Yeah, okay, by the line. Yeah.
And then just for our Brock meetings, the executive team and the GSA president Raka, we had lunch with one of the members of the board of trustees, Rob Welch. Rob Welch, name may sound familiar. His father, Robert Welch, is the Robert Welch Hall, and the courthouse downtown is also named after his father. And Rob Welch, the trustee that we met with, used to be BUSU's lawyer. So little connections there.
And he's the chair of the Capital Infrastructure Committee of the Brock University Board of Trustees. We might need that in the near future. So.
Yes, and
we build any building.
all new trustees get assigned a mentor. So I am Rob Welch's mentee, and he requested that we get lunch, and he told me to invite everyone. So that's why everyone was there. Then we met with HRE, finally checked off the last AVP from our list. Chelsea Takalo was recently hired as the new AVP Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, and then we met with some other people from HRE. We met again with ITS, and we met as an executive team. Robert and I have met with the president of the Alumni Association, but the executive team this time met with him. And then Alyssa and I have met with some people from the government and community relations team. And then Carly and I went to a social science luncheon with the dean and the associate dean, and I've been on some working groups for some events that are going to be held at Brock for Black students. And then Robert mentioned the new student center. We can go to the next one. A couple days ago, we had the McMaster Student Union president visit here. He's just going around. He wants to improve his student union. He's learning about other student unions. I think we were maybe his 3rd on his list, and I showed him around a bit. Kaylee talked to him about clubs. Robert had a long chat with him. Robert, obviously a McMaster alumni. And then we treated him to lunch at Isaac's, and he was on his way after that. And I mentioned earlier, I was in attendance at convocation as BUSU's representative. Our former VPSS actually won the Board of Trustees Spirit of Brock Medal, so that was really cool. Shout out to Radia. And then just a couple events, significant events that we have been to. So Carly and I went to an event for Indian international students that may be suffering with what is happening with the diplomatic relations between Canada and India. We went to a queer rights rally. Myself yesterday, I went to the Black Student Success Center official opening. That was really cool to see. One of the biggest requests we get from students are affinity spaces. We have the Indigenous Student Center, and now we have the Black Student Success Center. So hopefully this is the start of a few more spaces. I can see possibly in the future there being one for Muslim students and queer students. Those seem to be like the next two that are probably on the list for Brock. You can read some more about that. The BLSA president, which is a BUSU club, gave a speech and cut the ribbon, which was really cool. I've actually known Joseph since my first year. I met him in my village house. He was friends with my roommate. And then the BUSU president holds an ex officio seat on the board of the Brock University Alumni Association. So I attended the first meeting of the year for that. And then the elections happened yesterday. So the seat that I vacated was filled with by Shazadi Baloch. So congratulations to her. She was unable to join us today. And then 2 Senate seats, one was actually Carly's, were filled. So congratulations to Lillian and Daniel. And then in terms of my role or taking on the role of VPSS, I've been involved in the event planning meetings now. I've been going to some CPCs. As I had mentioned, hopefully we can get myself not included in that going forward. And then we've had to deal with some club conflicts. And I've been to some club events, as there is one right now going on. I've been to a couple other ones in Isaacs. Weekly Trivia Tuesdays, I've been attending most of those. Just checking up on the street team, see how they're doing at those. And we had karaoke. And I meant to get the next one, and I completely forgot. Whoops. I don't know what it is. And then Clubs Week, we had comedy night, and one of our biggest events of the year, the Carnival, which was, I think we had what, 4,000 people?
Over 4,000.
Over 4,000 people. That was a pretty good night. And then Rocktoberfest and Popcorn and Politics were some other events that we held. And then in terms of our VPA, Alyssa, obviously she's at the GA right now. She ran the yes side of the referendum, so shout out for getting that one passed. She's been doing some paper writing, going to her steering committee meetings, and doing some other things for USA as well. And then, as I mentioned before, she was involved in some things for CASA, BUSU AC. She's been to some of the decolonization events. She actually gave a presentation to PACRED. She doesn't sit on PACRED, but they invited her to come give a presentation on tuition. Carly and I were busy the day of Rocktoberfest, so Alyssa stepped in and hosted for us. And then Popcorn and Politics, Alyssa and Carly were asking the candidates questions. I just went up there and introduced them. Didn't do much for that one. And then Alyssa's been actually planning an event for bringing politicians to campus. Western University runs an event every year called Pints with Politicians, where students get to come chat with local MPs and MPPs. Alyssa's trying to replicate this in some manner. And then she's obviously been to most of the politician meetings and some of the Brock meetings and some of the homecoming events. And then as for Carly, she's been going to her Senate meetings, her committee meetings for Senate. She's at the GA right now as well. And then obviously she sits on PACRED, and she's also sitting as BUSU's representative on the hiring committee for the new university librarian. She was obviously there at she's on PACRED. Food First, she's been obviously involved with pop-up markets. Food First falls under Carly. She went to some events for the decolonization events, and then some other events and some committees that she sits on are listed there. Then also what I didn't mention is Alyssa and Carly actually drove a student to Toronto and got her to her surgery because the student had nobody to drive her there. So shout out to Carly and Alyssa. They took a day and they left quite early and came back quite late. They were quite exhausted, but the student was in need and they were there to help that student. So good on them. And that's it for my report.
All right. Thank you, James. Should have given him just 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's all right.
My bad.
12:45. All right.
2 minutes for
people with the rules. Yeah. Okay. Sure. All right. Any last questions before we wrap up our final agenda item? That's kind of what I thought. All right. I think everybody's kind of ready to go, but if there's anything that anyone would like to add, that would be your time. Just anything you want to share. If not, I would just like to say to everybody, with the events this weekend, I just want to say, be safe, have fun,
And kind of going back to our earlier conversation as well, just remember that you're representing the entire student body, even though you'll be out doing whatever university students do. Just remember that you are representing the student union, and yeah, just make good choices, be safe. I sound like my father now. So anyways, if there is nothing else, I will adjourn this meeting at 8:12 p.m. Thank you so very much for everyone who came. Our next meeting is the
27th. Yeah.
Yep, the 27th, because it's Monday. Good call. Monday, November 27th. We will see you all then.
Who's adjourning?
Oh yeah, I guess we gotta do that. No, I just motioned
Oh,
it.
sorry.
I just did it. Motion adjourned. Or you said, is that what
only
you're doing?
need- you only need-
Oh,
I would.